Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this very interesting discussion that we're about to have with the Ugandan Ambassador to the United States, Madame Oliva Wonekha, who is here in Denver with us. Thank you, Madame Wonekha, and welcome to Denver.
Pleasure.
And we're joined in this discussion by Monica Lebich-Brown, who is the Director of the Africa Development Promise here in Colorado. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you.
And I'm going to start with the ambassador and just find out from you briefly why you're here in Colorado this afternoon. And today is June the 25th. We're here sitting at the University of Denver for this discussion. So why are you here in Colorado?
Thank you very much for having me here in Colorado. I'm here on special invitation by Wonekha here on behalf of Africa Development Promise.
Thank you.
I would like to associate with her, and I am very happy that she'll be working in Uganda.
Okay. And I understand we are going to have a discussion here at the University of Denver. We're going to be talking specifically about the Africa Development Promise, and we're talking about the nexus or the connection between water, energy, and how all of that is going to contribute to development back in Uganda. So I'll start with you, Monica. I understand this discussion is going to focus on cooperatives, and you've been working on that with your organization, focusing on cooperatives, especially women in Uganda, where they can grow crops and be able to feed their families and be able to generate income for themselves. So why did you pick cooperatives to focus on?
Well, before we go there, I would like to thank the ambassador for being here. She was gracious enough to accommodate us to have her as the keynote speaker for our event called Journey to Sustainability. And we're looking at the nexus of water, energy, and agriculture, which is kind of a big picture subject. But what we're trying to do with the panelists that we have, who will include the ambassador, is to look at this big picture, and maybe from the discussions we can pull out some gems that we can use for smaller communities in developing countries. So it's kind of just an exploratory panel discussion. As far as Africa Development Promise is concerned, we are working with cooperatives because we feel like this is an important way in which people can pool their resources together, work together, and be able to share their resources. When we look at women in developing countries, most of the time they don't have the extension services, they don't have access to seed, they don't have access to fertilizer, and all the things that are important for them to achieve as smallholder farmers. Having them pull their resources together into a cooperative then gives them strength in numbers. And so that is why we felt that the cooperative model was a good one. And plus, countries like Uganda and Rwanda have very good legislation around supporting cooperatives. So we feel like we have to work with the government to go alongside them on the journey with cooperatives.
Thank you. And I'm going to get back to the ambassador in just a moment. We're going to ask some other questions that have to do with that connection, the larger implications of some of that work that has been done right here in Colorado, and how that impacts a lot of the rural communities in Uganda. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But I wanted to go back to Monica and talk about you're doing this from Denver, Colorado, and there are a lot of challenges that nonprofit organizations face doing the kind of work that they do. I wanted to find out from you, having run this organization, you're doing this is your second year, going into your third year. What are some of the important achievements that you can say your organization has been able to accomplish?
Well, actually, it is, we work in Rwanda and Uganda, and we work with a cooperative in Rwanda that has 66 women, and so far we've been able to provide them with training, on how to run a cooperative, because a lot of times you find a group, an association of people together, and they primarily run that as an association. But cooperatives actually have certain principles that are required to run them. And so we make sure that they understand those principles, and we help them with business planning, business training, entrepreneurial training, linking them up with banks, making sure that they have access to these, and also making sure that they have access to markets. And that's the most important thing, is making sure that they have access to markets. So we see ourselves working with them from agriculture, training, all the way up to selling their products, and then figuring out how they invest the money that they have. And so far in Rwanda, we've been able to do that. In Uganda, we are working with a group of women who do mushrooms. And at this stage, they are still some challenges that we have. We haven't fully registered. So as a result of that, the work that has been done is kind of at a primary level, and we're looking for opportunities once we've registered to be able to work with them fully. But at the moment, we've already developed plans of what we're going to do with them.
Okay, and I'm going to come back and talk to you in just a moment, and I'll ask the ambassador a couple more questions, but I'll come back to you in just a moment to find out how you are able to do this. Talk about financial resources, not just financial, human resources, to be able to put the resource together to be able to do it. I'll come back to you and ask that. But I'll talk to the ambassador now about her background. I realized before you became ambassador, you have a background in cooperatives as well, and I'm sure there's a connection, or there's some interest that naturally fits into this. So tell us about it. Why is it that there's so much focus on cooperatives and not business or not entrepreneurship, for example? Why do you think cooperatives, especially I think about coffee, because I know you've been involved with some growing of coffee and the marketing of that in Uganda. Tell us about that.
Well, I'm happy to be here to associate with Africa Development Promise at this particular time when they are only beginning in Uganda, because then I can share with Africa Development Promise some of my experiences, some of my knowledge, because in my past life, I have initiated women's cooperatives, the work that Wonekha now wants to do. So, in Uganda, fortunately, I think for Africa Development Promise, there is already a legal framework, there is regulatory framework, there is policy, and there are mechanisms already. For example, you have the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and within there is a whole department on cooperatives. It is led by a commissioner. So there is a mechanism already within which Africa Development Promise can go and operate. There are savings and credit cooperative societies, and many of them, the membership really is mainly women, because they are able to save together, lend money to each other, and then go into business. And here they are. Wonekha is going to focus on mushrooms. You know, the women have chosen mushrooms. So with the savings and credit cooperative movement, you know, they are able to even form a small bank of their own. You can call it a bank in quotes. They will be saving. They can lend to each other, and the
credit union.
Exactly, right. And then the activity for which they will be borrowing the money, the credit bit, will be mushroom growing. So, because banks, the financial institutions in our countries, are very intimidating, especially to the women. So, to start with, they will save and lend to themselves. And the framework is already in place For example, SACCOs, they are able to go to the Ministry of Trade and pick up what are called bylaws. Bylaws are some kind of constitution. But then the SACCO or the women's group domesticate that. They decide our membership, we will be saving, let's say the membership will be $50. The weekly savings will be $10. And if we should lend to each other, maximum will be only so much. If a member has saved $100, he or she can borrow up to $150. Then they set the rules within these bylaws, standard bylaws. So I think this is great for Africa Development Promise that I can share this at this hour.
Thank you. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but let me ask a question that has to do with after you've grown those products that have been put into the market. The United States, I wanted to talk about AGOA, the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, which I know is just passed the U.S. Congress. The U.S. Congress, basically, that law came about in 2010, and then it just got renewed for another 15 years or so, where farmers and products from African countries can enter into the United States duty-free. They're not charged, there are no taxes on that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
AGOA, Africa Growth Opportunity Act, for Africa as a continent is a huge opportunity, as the word is within AGOA. It's an opportunity for the African continent to be able to export so many products. In the old AGOA, there was 6,400 products in there. But the continent, we have lots of challenges, especially supply side constraints, especially in infrastructure. Electricity, energy, to run machines, roads, rail, transportation, ICT. But during the time when the old AGOA was running and we were experiencing these challenges, we've been addressing them. Let's say in Uganda, the biggest call on our budget is infrastructure in terms of roads, rail, electricity. We are busy building dams, and if there's anybody out there with a business in solar, in wind energy, renewable energy, they are welcome in Uganda. So we think, given another 10 years, we should be able to take advantage of this opportunity. And this goes for quite a number of African countries. So we are excited about this renewal.
Thank you. And let me ask the last, I'm going to throw that last question to Monica, talk about getting your organization going as a nonprofit, and then we'll wrap this up. What are some of the challenges that you have come across for this time that you're running the organization, organizing an event like this, raising money? I mean, what are some unique challenges that you have encountered, and how are you going about in tackling those challenges?
I think one of the challenges that we face, especially as we are fundraising for the organization, is having to educate donors on the type of sustainable programs that we want, and that we're not looking so much for a charity model where people go in and do the work for the local communities, or that they come in and send students in to do work, which benefits the students, but not necessarily the community. Here we are trying to make sure that when we are talking about sustainability, that the local people have ownership of their projects, of their programs, that they are the ones who initiate, and when we make the assessment, we know that this has come from within, and that there is buy-in from them, and that they are the owners of their project. So oftentimes you find that a donor is interested in the program, but they want to be able to either use their products, or they want us to have their people come in. And that's one of the things that we have to let them understand, that is not a sustainable model. And so when we have that disconnect with the donor, then the funding is not as readily available. That's one of the challenges that we face. Another challenge that we face is that aside from fundraising, working in country, we have to make sure that there is buy-in on that side and that people are interested in the programs. So when you're talking about training, it's not a one-off training, it's an ongoing relationship. So when Africa Development Promise identifies a group, we're not working with them for a week or a month. It is an ongoing relationship that might last about a year to a year and a half, where we feel that we are going to evaluate the work that we have done to make sure that we have reached the objectives, that in fact the members of the cooperatives feel that they are empowered enough to do this on their own, and then we can walk away. So those are some of the things that we deal with, and having donors understand that and take them on that journey is important.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to give the last word to the ambassador, and then we'll wrap this up. President Obama is going to travel to the African continent this July. I know he's going to Ethiopia. He's also going to go visit Kenya, and I know Uganda is next door. Are you disappointed that the president is not going to Uganda?
We would have loved it if he could reach Uganda, but we are excited because he will be in the region, and he will be on the continent. We don't operate as an island. He will have come to East Africa. For Ugandans, that's big. And I'm sure Ugandans will all be in Nairobi to have a peep if they can get it.
Thank you very much. And I want to especially thank the ambassador for joining us for this discussion, and also Wonekha Libich-Brown with Africa Development Promise here in Colorado. And we thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, thank you.